Welcome to the White Collar Files, the podcast that unravels the most intricate financial crimes of our time. I'm your host, Ethan, and today we're diving deep into a scandal that shook the nuclear industry to its core. Get ready to explore the Areva-Uramin case, a tale of corporate hubris, accounting fraud, and a €7 billion write-down that sent shockwaves through the French economy. Whether you're a finance professional, a true crime enthusiast, or simply curious about the dark underbelly of big business, this episode will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about corporate accountability. So, let's peel back the layers of this nuclear-sized deception. In today's episode of the White Collar Files, we're going to explore one of the most significant accounting fraud cases in recent European history, the Areva-Uramin scandal. This case, which came to light in 2016, involved a staggering €7 billion write-down on African uranium mines and sent shockwaves through the French nuclear industry and beyond. Let's start by setting the stage. Areva was a French multinational group specializing in nuclear power and renewable energy. Founded in 2001, it was majority owned by the French state and was considered a jewel in the crown of French industry. The company was seen as a global leader in nuclear technology and a key player in France's energy strategy. In 2007, Areva made what seemed like a bold and strategic move. The company acquired Uranium, a Canadian mining company with rights to several uranium deposits in Africa, for a whopping €1.8 billion. At the time, this acquisition was hailed as a masterstroke. Uranium prices were soaring, and securing a stable supply of the nuclear fuel seemed like a smart long-term strategy for a company at the forefront of the nuclear industry. However, what initially appeared to be a savvy business decision would eventually unravel into one of the most significant corporate scandals in French history. The problems began to surface in the years following the acquisition. It gradually became clear that the uranium deposits owned by Uranium were not as valuable or as easily exploitable as initially believed. The mines, located in Namibia, South Africa, and the Central African Republic, proved to be more challenging and less productive than expected. But the real bombshell dropped in 2016 when Areva announced a massive €7 billion write-down related to the Uranium acquisition. This write-down essentially admitted that the value of the Uranium assets had been grossly overstated on Areva's books for years. The scale of this write-down was staggering. To put it in perspective, it was nearly 4 times the original purchase price of Uranium. This wasn't just a case of a bad investment or overly optimistic projections, it raised serious questions about the due diligence conducted before the acquisition and the accounting practices used in the years that followed. As investigators began to dig into the case, a complex web of mismanagement, poor decision-making, and potential fraud began to emerge. One of the key figures at the center of the scandal was Anne Louverian, the CEO of Areva at the time of the Uranium acquisition. Louverian, once hailed as one of the most powerful women in business, found herself under intense scrutiny. Investigators raised several troubling questions about the Uranium deal. Why was such a high price paid for the company when some experts had valued it much lower? Why were the challenges with the African mines not identified earlier? And perhaps most crucially, why had the value of these assets been maintained on Areva's books for so long when there were clear indications of their diminished worth? The fallout from the scandal was immediate and far-reaching. Areva, once a proud symbol of French industrial might, was plunged into financial crisis. The company reported losses of €4.8 billion in 2014, followed by a staggering €2 billion loss in 2015. The French government, as the majority shareholder, was forced to step in with a bailout plan to save the company from collapse. But the impact of the scandal went beyond just financial losses. It shook confidence in the entire French nuclear industry, which had long been a source of national pride and a key component of the country's energy strategy. The scandal also raised serious questions about corporate governance and the oversight of state-owned enterprises in France. As the investigation progressed, more details emerged that painted a picture of a company that had lost its way. There were allegations of inflated contracts, conflicts of interest, and a corporate culture that prioritized growth and prestige over sound business practices. One of the most troubling aspects of the case was the suggestion that some within Areva may have been aware of the problems with the Uranium assets much earlier than publicly acknowledged. Internal reports and emails suggested that concerns about the value and viability of the African mines had been raised but were either ignored or suppressed. The scandal also highlighted the dangers of what some critics called uranium fever. In the mid-2000s, many in the nuclear industry were betting on a renaissance in nuclear power, driven by concerns about climate change and energy security. This optimism led to a surge in uranium prices and a rush to secure uranium deposits around the world. In this context, The Uramin acquisition may have been driven more by fear of missing out than by sound business logic. The Areva-Uramin case is a textbook example of how accounting fraud can occur in large, complex organizations. The company used various accounting techniques to maintain the inflated value of the Uramin assets on its books long after it should have been clear that they were worth far less. One of the key issues was the use of overly optimistic assumptions in the valuation models for the uranium deposits. These models relied on high uranium prices and optimistic production forecasts that were not adjusted even as market conditions changed and technical challenges at the mines became apparent. Another problematic practice was the capitalization of costs related to the Uramin projects. Instead of recognizing these costs as expenses, Areva added them to the value of the assets on its balance sheet. This had the effect of inflating the apparent value of the Uramin assets and delaying the recognition of losses. The case also highlighted the importance of proper impairment testing. Companies are required to regularly assess whether the value of their assets has declined and to recognize any such declines in their financial statements. In the Areva case, there were serious questions about whether these tests were conducted rigorously and whether their results were properly acted upon. The scandal had significant legal repercussions. In 2016, French prosecutors opened a formal investigation into the Uramin deal, focusing on potential charges of presenting or publishing inaccurate or untrue accounts, distributing false or misleading information, and forgery. Anlo Varian and several other former Areva executives found themselves at the center of this investigation. While the legal proceedings are still ongoing as of my last update, the case has already had a profound impact on the careers and reputations of those involved. The Areva-Uramin scandal also led to broader discussions about corporate governance in France, particularly in state-owned or state-controlled companies. Critics argued that the close relationship between big business and government in France had led to a lack of effective oversight and a culture of impunity for top executives. In response to the scandal, there were calls for reforms to strengthen corporate governance, improve risk management practices, and enhance the independence and effectiveness of boards of directors. The case served as a wake-up call for many in the French business community and led to a renewed focus on ethical business practices and accountability. The fallout from the scandal led to a major restructuring of Areva. The company was essentially broken up, with its reactor business merged into electricity utility EDF, and its uranium mining and nuclear fuel activities spun off into a new company called Orano. This restructuring was painful and costly, involving thousands of job losses and a significant reduction in the scope of the company's activities. It marked the end of the dream of creating a French nuclear champion that could dominate the global market. The Areva-Uramin case offers several important lessons for businesses, regulators, and investors. First, it highlights the dangers of overpaying for acquisitions, especially in cyclical industries like mining. The pressure to secure resources can lead companies to make rash decisions and overlook potential risks. Second, the case underscores the importance of robust due diligence processes. The problems with the Uramin assets should have been identified much earlier, either before the acquisition or in the years immediately following it. Third, the scandal demonstrates the critical role of strong, independent corporate governance. The board of directors and other oversight mechanisms failed to provide an effective check on management's decisions and accounting practices. Fourth, the case illustrates the risks associated with complex, long-term projects in challenging environments. The African uranium mines face technical, political, and economic challenges that were perhaps underestimated at the time of the acquisition. Finally, the Areva-Uramin scandal serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of corporate hubris and the pursuit of growth at all costs. The desire to build a global nuclear champion led to a series of decisions that ultimately brought the company to its knees. As we reflect on the Areva-Uramin case, it's worth considering its broader implications. This wasn't just a French scandal, it had ripple effects throughout the global nuclear industry and raised questions about the future of nuclear power in an era of cheap natural gas and rising renewable energy. The case also highlights the challenges of managing state-owned enterprises in a global, competitive marketplace. While government ownership can provide stability and access to resources, it can also lead to political interference and a lack of market discipline. Moreover, the Areva-Uramin scandal serves as a reminder of the importance of transparency and accountability in corporate reporting. In an era of complex financial instruments and global supply chains, it's more important than ever for companies to provide clear, accurate information to investors and stakeholders. As we wrap up our exploration of the Areva-Uramin case, it's clear that this scandal will be studied in business schools and boardrooms for years to come. It's a stark reminder of how even the most prestigious companies can fall victim to poor decision-making, inadequate oversight, and the temptation to manipulate financial statements. The €7 billion write-down that shook Areva wasn't just a number on a balance sheet, it represented shattered dreams, lost jobs, and a blow to national pride. It's a cautionary tale that reminds us of the real-world consequences of white-collar crime and corporate malfeasance. As we conclude this episode of the White Collar Files, I hope you've gained insights into the complex world of corporate accounting and the devastating consequences when it goes wrong. The Areva-Uramin case is a stark reminder of the importance of corporate integrity and the need for vigilant oversight in our financial systems. If you found this deep dive into white-collar crime enlightening, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Your support helps us continue to shed light on these crucial issues that affect us all. Until next time, this is Ethan, reminding you to stay informed and always follow the money trail.